Hello, my name is Rosalind Hayes and I'm a private voice, piano, and beginning guitar instructor in Chester County. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the differences between pop and classical singing in terms of their style. There are some basic foundations to singing that are the same really across the board. We want to make sure that we're having a nice, good foundation for solid breath control. And that means breathing nice and low into the lower belly and keeping the solar plexus relaxed and not squeezed, so that when we exhale or phonate, make sound, that the lower belly, the lower abdominal muscles are squeezing inward to put pressure on the lungs and release the air over a longer period of time, so we can get through those long phrases, maintain good pitch, maintain, a nice solid tone to the sound. A couple differences between pop and classical. With pop music, we're going to have less vibrato overall. Generally, the vibrato will be at the end of the note, the tail end. It doesn't mean that we have no vibrato, we just have less, okay? So for example, E. That's again, E. So the vibrato goes at the tail end, and it starts off what we call a straight tone. So that means that we're not having those overtones in the voice quite so much. We're having more of a straight tone until the tail end of the note, and then we have a little more vibrato where we let the chords loose and vibrate a little bit more. With classical music, we're going to generally have vibrato throughout. So be more E. So you can hear the vibrato throughout the whole note. Again, E. So pop, E. Classical, E. You may also notice that pop singing has a little bit of a brighter tone. So I'm going to use a little bit of a higher larynx. My larynx are, that's where my vocal cords are housed. We want that to be a little bit higher up in the vocal tract. And so we're not going to push so much sound through as we might do with classical music. Not that we ever want to push or strain, but we are going to have a microphone with pop music and other audio amplification systems. So we want to be mindful of that and not really project a huge amount of sound because the larynx is going to be in a higher position, that makes our sound a little bit more vulnerable to stress if we were to push a lot of sound out. So we're going to have a little bit of a higher larynx, more where you would speak. Speak, 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 speak. That higher laryngeal position. It's going to feel the same way. Whereas with classical music, we want to bring down the larynx, and this would be, if I was to speak in a classical music tone, this would kind of be where my voice would sit. Speak, speak. We get more of a low sound. Speak, speak. Very different feel. So we're going to have a lower larynx for classical, higher larynx for pop. Some other things that we might use in pop music include vocal fry register. We might enter into a note with a little vocal fry to give it a bit more grittiness. We really don't use that in classical music. You really want to enter into the note a little bit more gently, so that the air and the air and the sound start at the same time. We're not going to have that grittiness in the same way. We might also have glottal stops like uh-oh, uh-oh in in pop music, but we will not really have that in classical music. If it was classical, it would kind of be uh-oh, uh-oh. It's a softer start. We don't want that hard sound in the beginning. So we talked about having different laryngeal positions. We talked about vibrato versus no vibrato. Classical is going to be a little bit of a larger sound. than pop because we're not using a microphone. It was designed in a way to project the voice over an orchestra before we really had those technologies available. So you can be a little bit more robust with your sound with classical music. Pop should be a little bit lighter, more flexible. Pop music, we're going to have more of those glottal stops, more vocal fry. Both pop and classical use something called melismas in classical music, or riffs in pop music. I've talked about that a little bit in some of the other videos, but a melisma or riff is a series of moving notes. Here's a classical melisma. And if you want to learn a little bit more how to develop that, go back and check out my other video on melismas and riffs. Pop music tends to base more of the riffs around the pentatonic scale. Straight tone, riffed, gentler sound, pentatonic scale, not so much up and down through major scales. And that's really about it. So foundations are the same. Breath control has to be there. You want to think about your resonation. You want to think about having nasal resonance in your voice. You want to think about having space. You don't want strain or tightness in your sound. All those things remain the same. But pop, classical differ in that pop has a higher laryngeal position than classical. Pop has more of those vocal fry sounds and glottal onsets. Pop music and classical music both use riffs and melisma, which are moving notes, but classical tends to base more around chromatic and major scales. In pop music, it tends to be more around pentatonic scales. Classical music has vibrato throughout the note, and pop usually just reserves it for the end. So I hope that was helpful. For more tips, check out some of my other videos. And if you're interested in lessons, if you live in Chester County, feel free to check out my website, doraymi-lessons.com, DORAYMI lessons.com. Or you can always take lessons online too with me if you're not in the area. All right, thank you so much. Bye.